I'm going to call the meeting to order, regular council meeting, Tuesday, February 13th, 7:30 p.m., Twinsburg Government Center. Mr. Macers, please call the roll.
Mrs. Stauffer.
Here.
Mr. Steele.
Here.
Mr. McFerrin.
Here.
Mr. Bellin.
Here.
Mr. Barr.
Here.
Mr. Fury.
Here.
Mr. Scafidi.
Here.
Okay, please rise for the invocation and pledge of allegiance led by Mayor Yates.
Father, we seek your guidance for the business that is before us. In planning for the future of the city of Twinsburg, give us vision. Guide us to make decisions that are not self-serving, but for the betterment of our community, so we continue to move in a positive direction. Amen.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, I'd like approval of the minutes from January 23rd, 2018. Any corrections or changes? Okay, the minutes stand as written. At this time, we have an awards and presentation from Lindsay Kuhn, Auditor of the State.
Good evening. My name is Lindsay Kuhn, and I am here on behalf of the great auditor Dave Yost. I have actually already given the award to your your previous finance director, Karen Howes. She is someone I know that she is now with another entity, but I do want to just let you all know what a gem you had in Karen and certainly the entire department as a whole. We have what we refer to as the Regional Advisory Board within our office, and that's a group of folks that get together with the auditor himself and just kind of go back and forth about concerns and issues across the state. And Karen was one of the very select members of that commission, so we will certainly miss her a great deal, but I do want to let you all know we audit about 5,900 government entities. I know that you know that because I gave this same spiel last year when I presented you with the award for a clean audit, and we just really want to say thank you all for being such excellent stewards of taxpayer dollars. Not everyone receives an award, let alone just the qualifications alone does not mean that you actually receive it. So it's a real feather in your cap. It means that you work well with your finance department, you work in concert with your administration, the board, and the council, and we certainly appreciate it. So we just want to say thank you very much, and keep up the great work. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Wonderful, wonderful. Next, we have audience participation.
First is Mike Razor.
Good evening, and I'm sorry for the Groundhog Day moment. My name is Mike Razor. I live at 4312 Eagle Avenue in Stowe. May it please Council President, Mayor, and Law Director, I'm here to listen, basically. I'm a city councilman in Stowe. I'm a partner at a law firm in downtown Cleveland, and I'm running for the Ohio House of Representatives on the Republican ticket this May. But I'm here to learn more about Twinsburg so that I can be an effective representative of you if and when I'm elected down in Columbus. The important things to me are government efficiency, which I can tell just through your caucus meetings you guys care about also, and also helping people achieve the American dream and making Ohio a state where upward mobility is a reality. So thank you for your time. Look forward to listening to the rest of your council meeting, and I'm going to give each of you guys my cell phone number if you want it after the meeting. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Next, we have Dan Barakowski, but he is, gentleman is out there on the phone, so. Mr. Barakowski.
Yeah. Sorry about that.
Yeah. We move.
Actually, I just put my name on there just in case I had to talk, but I'm here for the Corridor Reserve Project. And is that, have you guys gotten to that item yet? Or,
We have not, I believe, who's the council rep for planning commission?
I'm on planning
Oh,
commission.
did you have a motion for them for their approval or preliminary plat approval tonight, or?
I did not, no.
Okay. Well, we will, I don't know if Mr. Finch is still around.
Did you just give him his keys?
Oh, did you?
Yeah. They did, we just had, they were at the planning commission meeting. There was no,
Yeah, I'm assuming they were at the
Presentation.
most recent planning commission, received preliminary plat approval, is that correct?
That's correct.
So you'd be looking for a motion to approve planning commission's preliminary plat
That's
approval
right,
from
yeah.
council. So maybe I can address that with you, Ms. Stauffer,
yeah,
quickly. I mean,
we'll
it's,
take a look through our minutes.
generally, we just make there's a motion, you know, and I know that you're just new in January, the planning commission on this, but generally there's a motion on the preliminary plat approvals that come out of planning that are then brought to council for approval of that preliminary approval so they can move forward, because planning is a recommending body on that issue. So I think, Mr. Fury, you've been on planning, you've done those before, correct?
Yes, I have.
Yeah, I mean,
Can
so
we-
you-
If
you're-
I'm going to do that, could we go over it just briefly
I'm
again?
gonna, yeah,
Sure.
I'll need to pull the minutes up
So we're
on
going
that.
to, we had a recommendation from the planning commission for
Right.
preliminary plat approval.
Mm.
What was the name of your,
Quarry Reserve at
Quarry
Boulder
Reserve.
Brook. the name
This
of
is
the-
extension of Boulder Brook.
Quarry Reserve
Yeah.
at Boulder Brook? Okay, so the motion would be, from the planning commission's recommendation, I make a motion that council accept a preliminary plat approval for Quarry Reserve at Boulder Brook.
And that's it, that's all it was, the preliminary plat approval that came out of the last planning commission, I believe. I mean, council should, or, I'm sorry, planning commission, or somebody should have gotten this to you, Mrs. Stuff, or somebody
Well,
probably.
and I don't believe they did, that's why I'm. a little-
Lynn-
that's
Lynn
not
tip-
what- um,
I,
Let me just
I believe-
take a look back. I don't
I
recall, there
believe
was
they
no
voted to-
motion.
I was there, I
told.
believe they voted to approve the preliminary site plan.
Yeah, we were
Yeah.
approved.
Right.
And technically, it's a preliminary plat and site plan for the R5 district, so.
Okay,
Okay.
So-
Yeah, you were there, Mr. or Mayor,
I was there, yeah. I'll see if I can find the minutes.
right. So when we get to that portion, we'll wait till miscellaneous. at the end.
and that, yeah, that'll come up at miscellaneous near the end of the meeting.
Okay.
Right.
Do you want me to
Well,
sit
thank you
down?
for coming.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, please. You can go back to your phone call.
Okay.
There is no other audience participation.
Okay. Next, we'll move on to council communication and committee reports. Mr. Fury.
Thank you. I had an opportunity to volunteer with Mayor Yates and others at the Twinsburg Athletic Boosters fundraiser, which was a junior high wrestling tournament that Mr. Soracey started probably 20 years ago. And it just amazes me every time I'm there how they can do 2,000 matches in 2 days with kids just backed up, and, you know, preliminary matches are 1-1-1. I mean, that's just lightning fast. So they made a lot of money, and it was a well-run event, as always. I attended a compensation committee meeting. I think Ms. Stauffer will report on that later. I will be attending a celebrity bartending fundraiser for the CERT group later next Saturday, the 17th. I think Mr. Barr is going to go elaborate on that. The Friends of the Park group that is forming will be meeting at 7 o'clock on Monday, the 19th at Brewster's. They've got the back room. If you're interested in getting involved in this upstart group, which is going to be separate from the city, that's going to work to try to raise funds and support our entity. Let's see. And that's it for right now. Thank you.
Next, we have Mr. Steele.
The Architecture Review Board met on the first of the month, and they approved a change for the sign over in front of the high school. They're going to reuse the brickwork, but they're changing the sign. They approved some different signs for a couple different businesses. but they ran in at Saffron, which is on 91. They approved one sign, and then they they disapproved a couple of variances for other signs that they wanted to go 60 inches or 78 inches high. That was it.
Okay. All right, Mr. Scafidi.
Thank you. Good evening. The Board of Zoning Appeals met on January 24th. We had two appeals that night. We had appeal number 12 and appeal number 1. Appeal number 12 was a variance for, specifically they were proposing a floor area of 40 by 60 or a 24 square foot floor area on Connon Avenue. Specifically, they were looking for a 900 square foot floor area variance was being requested. The board reviewed it and they approved it 4-0. Appeal number 1 was the applicant was proposing a 6,085 square foot building located 164 feet from the west boundary line of a multifamily development known as Arbor Glen. Specifically, they were looking for a 43-foot 9-inch setback variance from the property line. After the board reviewed that, they also approved that variance by a 4-0. So at this time, I would like to make a motion that we waive the 30-day waiting period for these two appeals. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Steele seconds. Is there any discussion? Mr. Matros, call the roll, please. I made the motion. Mr. Steele seconded.
Thank you, Mr. Scafidi.
Yes.
Mr. Steele.
Yes.
Ms. McFerrin.
Yes.
Mrs. Stoffer.
Yes.
Mr. Bellin.
Yes.
Mr. Barr.
Yes.
Mr. Fury.
Yes.
Thank you. And that was it for the Board of Zoning Appeals. The next meeting, I believe, has not been scheduled yet. Also, one mention I wanted to make, I did attend the Night at the Races held by our fire department, and I must say that once again, it was a great night. Everybody had a great time. Very well-attended event and very well-organized event. So thank you to all in the fire department who had any hand in organizing that. It was a great night and a lot of fun. And that's it. That's all that I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I attended the Planning Commission meeting, met on February 5th. There was an overview presented on the Connecting Communities Grant in the Twinsburg project, the first mile, last mile study. The team that consisted of representatives from AMATS, City Architecture, and WSP have done a study on Twinsburg and ways to connect the community. So it was an overview of the project and where they're heading. Planning Commission did not actually vote on anything, but they seem to be in favor of the ideas that were presented. I think they were looking for just some information on that. And the next meeting, Planning Commission meeting, is set for March 5th. I also had Finance Committee did not meet. Public Works meeting was canceled. I didn't know, Mr. Bellin, if you want to talk on any of them. Okay, and that's all I have now. Ms. McFerrin.
So I have no meetings to report on. The Parks and Rec meeting will be on February 22nd here. Community Relations will be on the 22nd of March. Safety is March 13th. And the CIC is on February 20th. I did attend the Night at the Races, and that was, again, a great event, well attended and a lot of fun. I will be at the Celebrity Bartending on Saturday. It happens to be my birthday, so please come and support the 13 and my birthday. I did want to share something that we're going to be passing a resolution declaring February the Heart Healthy Month, and going along with that, the fire department is going to be having a CPR and training day, February 24th. 8:30 to 11:30 will be one session, and at the second session will be 12 to 3. And the history behind that is the city, we had all of the employees certified first aid and CPR. It was an initiative for the year in 2017. At the Community Relations meeting, Mrs. Powers shared that the school district had an in-service day for the teachers so they could all be CPR trained. And I had an idea that we should try to have all the city residents certified as on CPR. So, and then recently, in the last 6 months, we actually had 3 incidents in the city where someone was able to save someone with CPR. So I'm excited about this event, and I hope that all the residents will take advantage of it. And that's all I have.
Good evening. Just a reminder, there are several boards and commission spots open. If you're interested, please apply no later than March the 5th at 4:30. There are 17 total openings across Architectural Review Board, Civil Service Commission, Environmental Commission. There are 7 spots on the Glen Eagles Advisory Board, which I'm a member of, and there are a couple of ward-specific spots open for Parks and Rec, one of them being in Ward 5. Also, I'll be attending the celebrity bartendering event that's going to be on Saturday evening from 7 until close. We're playing for CERT, which is the Community Emergency Response Team. We'll have some drink specials, we'll have some raffles. There's a lot of super cool prizes that you can win. You get to see us all up there behind the bar. So we'd love to see you. You can carry out and you can get food, and all those would go towards the proceeds as well. Nothing else to report this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Barr.
Thank you very much. The Twinsburg Environmental Commission meeting was held last Thursday, the 8th, and we discussed a number of topics. Most importantly, one of which was the biodiversity display that is out in the lobby. We encourage everybody to take a look at that. This is for Earth Day, which is coming up here on April 21st at Liberty Ledges. And we've got the work of several Twinsburg students on display, and they're going to be at the Earth Day event as well. It's artwork, designs, poetry, things of that nature. And that'll be on the entrance to the Nature Center. So I appreciate everybody taking a quick peek at that. Carol Brandstetter, who's a Twinsburg resident, and her Lego Dragons team presented on their hydrodynamics project. And it had to do with microplastics in the protocol for how we handle that in our water supply. The members of the team were given a tour of the wastewater treatment plant and discussed microplastics and their impact on the environment. And this is at least brought to light a problem that I didn't even know really existed, but all of the fleece and synthetics and all these things we buy, all of these tiny little plastics end up in our water supply, and these young men and women are trying to figure out a way to best handle that. And so they found that there are bacteria and stuff that'll eat these things. It was a very informative display. Next year is the 5th anniversary of Twinsburg's Earth Day event. So if anybody has any great ideas, please see our current chair, Daisy Walker. She's in attendance tonight, or reach out to me or any of the other members on council. The next Environmental Commission meeting is Thursday, March 8th at 7 o'clock here in council chambers. The best part about going last is everybody's mentioned everything that I was going to say. I helped out at the Twinsburg Athletic Booster Tournament. Like Mr. Freer said, it was phenomenal, just a really well-run event. I know they raised some great funds. The Twinsburg Fire Department, Local 3630, my understanding is they raised over $3,000 just for the Rescue for PTSD event. I attended that as well as some of the other members here. It was a great time. Ms. McPherson touched on the community CPR AED training. I highly encourage everyone here to attend if you don't have your certification. Mr. Fury mentioned Friends of Twinsburg Parks, and I will land the plane with what Ms. McPherson said, the CIC meeting, 6 to 7 p.m. At Center on the Square on Tuesday the 20th. That's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Barr. Yes, you have something else? Mr.
Yeah.
Chief?
The Volunteer Firemen's Board, we actually had a meeting. Chief Morgan was there, I was there, Shannon, and one of our full-time firefighters. And basically, we're going to get the paperwork done this year to make sure that the process and everything is done. So if we have a problem with the firefighter is injured on duty, and it's applicable to the Volunteer Firemen's Fund, it's going to be taken care of.
Great.
So that's it.
All right. Thank you. Mayor?
All right. Well, good evening, everyone. I'll probably repeat a few of the things that were shared already. So, a couple of things that I've attended the last few weeks. First, that no one else did, I don't believe, was a career day at Dodge. So it's always a good time to get out.
I was going to say, we had a couple.
You know that? Right. So it's always fun to just to hear the interesting questions come from fourth graders. You know, I can talk to them all day long about what happens here at the city, but they definitely want to know more personal items and those kind of things. So it's always fun spending some time with the kids. I did attend, and I know other councilmen also attended, but they didn't mention it, so I'm the one that's going to be able to mention it tonight, was welcome our new dean here at the Kent State Geauga campus. So Dean Spilesbury had a meet and greet, and we were able to meet and talk with her. I did meet with her prior in the week just to talk about ways we can kind of work together. You know, it's great. You know, this is not necessarily a college town, but it is a college town. We do have Kent State presence here, so we want to try to embrace that as much as we can. I was also at the TAB tournament running a clock, and I was a wrestler, and it's fascinating to me to see 36 teams running 6 mats frantically for 2 days, and the amount of matches they get through there and how organized it is. And it really is, if you've ever been to it and you know anything about wrestling, it probably is a higher, more competitive competition than any state meet that could ever happen. It's just, that's the quality of the teams that come to Twinsburg for that. And Night at the Races is always a really fun event. Our firemen do that every year. It's just one of those that you have a good time. It's constant action the whole time, so I encourage council, if you haven't been in the past, to go next year. Things coming up. I know Ms. McFerrin mentioned Community CPR Day. This is something that she's proposed after we required basically all of our employees to get CPR and AED training. You know, we kind of found in the city when we did this, we had a couple events where really AEDs brought people back to life. And we had a high school kid, we had a coach, you know, one of our track coaches, and it's just one of those things where we really started taking a look around the city, and we were finding that we didn't have enough AEDs, and some of them that we did have didn't even work. So as we did an inventory, I think we ended up buying 17 of them, but then getting about 3 more. So I think we put 20 around city buildings, and it's just something that, you know, we brought up that it would love to be, we'd love to have our whole city certified. You know, as we enter into more of an app world, there's apps now that municipalities have that basically can alert you if you're CPR trained that someone is in need 100 feet from you. So there's a lot of different ways that you can come in contact to help people, and I think it's important for the community to come out and take advantage of this. It's free to anyone, so it'll be CPR and AED training. So please come out if you can. This Thursday will be my State of the City. So if anyone, I believe you can still sign up, probably just need to contact the chamber directly, but they'll be hosting it at the Hilton again. So I'm looking forward to that. I will be one of the, I guess you can call celebrity bartenders at rush hour. I don't know really much what I'm doing, so I'll just stand in the back and work a tap on a keg or something. But I'm looking forward to that. It should be fun. Hopefully we can raise some money. Let's see, I just want to mention this because I know Derek's not here. Open registration for our community gardens is on February 20th, so that's for residents to be able to sign up for their plot. I also want to wish the swimmers and divers good luck. They're heading down to districts this coming week. I happen to have a diver on the team, so I know everything, the schedule, everything's going on, so I just wanted to mention that. And then lastly, I just want to thank council and department heads. Each year I call it a retreat, but we kind of get away from city buildings and we go somewhere and we spend a whole day, and it is a long day. It's an 8:30, 9 o'clock to, I think we got done about 4:30, 4:45. But it's a great time because while I get to work with council some, I'm see department heads every day, but to get all of us together in a room to really talk about things going on in the city, issues that we'd like to see addressed, you know, what are we looking for in the future, what are some good things and bad things that happened last year. I just really want to thank them because I get a lot out of that. Hopefully you guys did too, and I'll continue to do that because I think it's just one day of the year that we can just sit and communicate, you know, openly and just, you know, discuss a lot of the issues that are happening in our community. So with that, we'll move on to department head reports. All right. Chief Morgan, you want to start?
Good evening, council and mayor. For the month of January, the fire department responded to 276 calls for service. We're only 1 month into the year, but that's 25% over where we were last January. So we're continuing to stay pretty busy. Notable events, for some reason we had quite a few car fires in the month of January, and quite a few car accidents, especially up on 480, so that kept us busy. The Fire Prevention Bureau completed 99 inspections in the month of January, and we also completed 3 fire investigations. We had 4 hours of public education time contacting 29 people, and we also completed 261 training sessions totaling almost 400 hours of training time. Some points of interest. The weather warning sirens were tested on February 3rd, and they all worked properly except for the one on Bavaria Road. And the Twinsburg Township Service Department is working on repairs for that site. And it's already been mentioned, but I turned the table a little bit. I want to thank everyone that participated in the Night at the Races. It was a very successful event, and it helps our local 3630 support a lot of good charitable causes. Rescue 4 PTSD was one of them. They do several high school scholarships amongst other charities they support. So, and with in relationship to the community CPR and AED, which has already been mentioned, I'm told the quickest way to register for that is to go through twinsburgrotary.com to register. So that's my report for this evening.
Thank you.
Thank you. Chris?
Good evening, Council. Well, during the last couple months, the Service Department's been out, when it's not snowing, they're doing pothole patching, and we have, during the month of January and so far through February, they've done 644 potholes. We're using a new product. It's a modified hot mix, which is new. Seems to be holding up pretty well, but time will tell on that. But seems to be doing the job for us. In the last couple days, they've been doing some grinding of the roads also. Those areas where you've got a lot of potholes, where you've got so much material going down that you have a tendency to plow it right back up. So the thicker we can get that product, the more it'll hold, the better it'll hold up. So we're doing some grinding on the. I know they've been up on Chamberlain and some of the other really bad roads. So they'll continue to do those roadway repairs to try to get us through the winter. Winter operations, we've gone through 16 snow and ice events. They've applied just under 6,800 tons of salt. And it's been kind of a challenge this year. We started with a full dome of salt, and that's about the last time we were full. So Cargill's had some issues getting salt to us, but they've kept us ahead of these events, but it's gotten pretty difficult at times. So we're working with them. They're promising some salt deliveries, and we'll see how that goes. On the wastewater side, our microturbine's been down for a while. Needed a new compressor, and that's been an issue for us. The compressors, we don't get the life out of them that we would hope for. So we've gone to a new style compressor that we'll be putting in the next couple of weeks, and we visited a couple sites that are using that style. So I think it'll work a little bit better, and that we'll get a little bit better performance out of that microturbine. And that's all I have tonight.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you. And that is all we have this evening.
Okay. Well, then we'll go ahead and move on to legislation. First, we have Ordinance 01-2018.
An ordinance approving a change order of the contract with Kavanaugh Building for modification of additional work related to the golf clubhouse project and declaring an emergency.
Okay, this is a third and final reading for Ordinance 01-2018. So at this time, I'd like to make a motion to adopt Ordinance 01-2018 as an emergency. Is there a second?
I'll second.
I made the motion. It was seconded by Mr. Barr. Now, this is a change order not to exceed $258,000, $258,256. The change order includes a laundry list of items from site drainage to soil conditions encountered during, am I in the right place?
I'm just looking at the mayor.
If I need to suspend the rules?
Yes.
Well, this is on the emergency.
On the emergency, I'll need to suspend the rules? Okay.
Yes.
I thought because it was a third reading, I wouldn't have to do that.
Well, it's on, you still have to declare an emergency as far as waiving
Waive
the
the 30
time and
days.
waiving the 30-day
So I have to
waiting
waive the
period.
30 days?
Yeah.
Okay, so I
And
want
we
to
needed that.
make a motion to waive the 30 days?
No, you just want to make your standard emergency
Okay.
motion.
And it's been amended. The legislation has been amended to include the emergency clause, so even
Okay.
though it's been read on 3 occasions, it's an emergency from waiving the standard 30-day waiting period, so.
So you want me to begin?
So I believe we have a motion to do that. Mrs. Stoffer made it, Mr. Barr seconded the motion on the emergency. We'll treat that as emergency,
Okay.
okay? So Mrs. Stoffer,
Yes.
Mr. Barr,
Yes.
Mr. Steele,
Yes.
Ms. McFerrin,
Yes.
Mr. Bellin,
Yes.
Mr. Fury,
Yes.
Mr. Scafidi.
Yes.
Okay, so that's for the emergency.
For the
now.
emergency.
So now you can have discussion on the legislation.
Okay. So that was just, it was a lot of different items. We've read it 3 times. It included some utility, things that were encountered, drainage and soil conditions, issues that were encountered during installation. It also had some kitchen changes. It needed to be on emergency so we can make it available for contractors. Any further discussion?
The total amount of of all the changes together is $258,256.
Correct. Yeah. Any other discussion?
Do you have a motion to adopt?
Now we need to make a motion to adopt ordinance 01-2018. Is there a second?
I'll second.
I made the motion, it was seconded by Ms. McFerrin.
Okay.
Okay, Mr. Mason.
Mrs. Stoffer,
Yes.
Ms. McFerrin,
Yes.
Mr. Steele,
Yes.
Mr. Bellin,
Yes.
Mr. Barr,
Yes.
Mr. Fury,
Yes.
Mr. Scafidi.
Yes.
Okay, ordinance 01-2018 passes by a 7-0 vote. Next, we have ordinance 05-2018.
An ordinance authorizing the sale at auction of certain personal property owned by the city of Twinsburg and no longer needed for municipal purposes.
Okay, this is the third and final reading, so I'd like to make a motion to adopt ordinance 05-2018. Is there a second?
I'll second.
I made the motion, it was seconded by Mr. Steele. Now, these items are, there's around 123 old phones that are going to be auctioned off. Is there any discussion on that? Mr. Maestros, please call the roll.
Mrs. Stoffer,
Yes.
Mr. Steele,
Yes.
Ms. McFerrin,
Yes.
Mr. Bellin,
Yes.
Mr. Barr,
Yes.
Mr. Fury,
Yes.
Mr. Scafidi.
Yes.
Ordinance 05-2018 passes by a 7-0 vote. Next, we have ordinance 11-2018.
An ordinance accepting the bid of the Vismeg Landscape Incorporated for the 2018 tree planting program and declaring an emergency.
I'd like to make a motion to suspend the rules on ordinance 11-2018, place it on its third and final reading, and declare it an emergency. Is there a second?
I'll second.
I made the motion. It was seconded by Mr. Fury. The bid is $78,492, and it's needed on emergency because the nursery needs to begin the harvesting. Is there any further discussion? Mr. Maestros, please call the roll.
On the emergency, Mrs. Stoffer,
Yes.
Mr. Fury,
Yes.
Mr. Bellin,
Yes.
Mr. Barr,
Yes.
Mr. Scafidi,
Yes.
Mr. Steele,
Yes.
and Ms. McFerrin.
Yes.
Emergency clause passes 7-0. Now I'd like to make a motion to adopt ordinance 11-2018 as an emergency. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, I made the motion again. It was seconded by Mr. Fury. Any further discussion?
This is our standard tree program. This will do 150 spring plantings and 150 fall plantings, and these are the sidewalk trees that are next to the road that the city puts in for everybody. Thank you.
Mrs. Stoffer,
Yes.
Mr. Fury,
Yes.
Mr. Bellin,
Yes.
Mr. Barr?
Yes?
Mr. McFeety, or Scafidi?
Yeah.
Mr. Scafidi? Mr. Steele?
I'm celebrating on the St. Patrick's Day.
Yes.
Ms. McFerrin?
Forgot to wear my green.
Ordinance
Didn't wear it
Ordinance
tonight.
11, 2018 passes by a 7-0 vote. Next, we have Ordinance 12, 2018.
This is an ordinance accepting the bid of Parent Asphalt Company for the 2018 road improvement project and declaring an emergency.
I'd like to make a motion to suspend the rules on Ordinance 12, 2018, place it on its third and final reading, and declare it an emergency. Is there a second? I made the motion. It was seconded by Mr. Scafidi. Now, the bid on this is $1,054,399, and it's needed on emergency because the company won't schedule the project until to begin the scheduling of the project. Any further discussion on that? Mr. Maestros, please call the roll.
Mrs. Stoffer?
Yes.
Mr. Scafidi?
Yes.
Mr. Bellin?
Yes.
Mr. Barr?
Yes?
Mr. Fury?
Yes.
Mr. Steele?
Yes.
And Ms. McFerrin?
Yes.
Okay, emergency clause passes 7-0. Now I'd like to make a motion to adopt Ordinance 12, 2018 as an emergency. Is there a second? I made the motion. It was seconded by Mr. Scafidi. Any discussion? Mr. Maestros, please call the roll.
Mrs. Stoffer?
Yes.
Mr. Scafidi?
Yes.
Mr. Bellin?
Yes.
Mr. Barr?
Yes?
Mr. Fury?
Yes.
Mr. Steele?
Yes.
And Ms. McFerrin?
Yes.
Ordinance 12, 2018 passes by a 7-0 vote. Next, we have Ordinance 13, 2018.
This is an ordinance accepting the bid of Spano Brothers Construction for the 2018 citywide sidewalk program and declaring an emergency.
I'd like to make a motion to suspend the rules on Ordinance 13, 2018, place it on its third and final reading, and declare it an emergency. Is there a second?
A second.
I made the motion. It was seconded by Mr. Fury. Now, the bid is $88,364, and it will repair 132 locations throughout the city. It's needed on an emergency because the contractor, we'd like to get this moving, get this scheduled on the, get us on the schedule and get it done sooner rather than later. And this is the same company that we had last year. Any further discussion? Mr. Maestros, please call the roll.
Mrs. Stoffer?
Yes.
Mr. Fury?
Yes.
Mr. Barr?
Yes?
Mr. Scafidi?
Yes.
Mr. Steele?
Yes.
Ms. McFerrin?
Yes.
And Mr. Bellin?
Yes.
Emergency clause passes 7-0. Now I'd like to make a motion to adopt Ordinance 13, 2018 as an emergency. Is there a second?
A second. Yield.
I made the motion. Mr. Barr seconded. Any further discussion? Mr. Maestros, please call the roll.
Mrs. Stoffer?
Yes.
Mr. Barr?
Yes?
Mr. Fury?
Yes.
Mr. Scafidi?
Yes.
Mr. Steele?
Yes.
Ms. McFerrin?
Yes.
And Mr. Bellin?
Yes.
Ordinance 13, 2018 passes by a 7-0 vote. Next, we have Ordinance 14, 2018.
An ordinance accepting the bid of J.D. Striping and Services Incorporated for the 2018 road striping contract and declaring an emergency.
I'd like to make a motion to suspend the rules on Ordinance 14, 2018, put it on its third and final reading, and declare it an emergency. Is there a second?
I'll second.
I made the motion. It was seconded by Mr. Steele. So the bid is $70,972, and it's needed on an emergency, so as soon as the weather breaks, we can perform the roundabout striping. Most of the other striping will be done in July, I believe, for the rest of the city. Any further discussion? Mr. Maestros, please call the roll.
Mrs. Stoffer?
Yes.
Mr. Steele?
Yes.
Mr. Fury?
Yes.
Mr. Scafidi?
Yes.
Ms. McFerrin?
Yes.
Mr. Bellin?
Yes.
And Mr. Barr?
Yes?
The emergency clause passes 7-0. Now I'd like to make a motion to adopt Ordinance 14, 2018 as an emergency. Is there a second?
I'll second.
I made the motion. It was seconded by Mr. Fury. Any further discussion? Mr. Maestros, please call the roll.
Mrs. Stoffer?
Yes.
Mr. Fury?
Yes.
Mr. Scafidi?
Yes.
Mr. Steele?
Yes.
Ms. McFerrin?
Yes.
Mr. Bellin?
Yes.
And Mr. Barr?
Yes.
Ordinance 14, 2018 passes by a 7-0 vote. Next, we have Ordinance 15, 2018.
This is an ordinance accepting the bid of the Lockhart Concrete Company for the roadway and sewer improvements on Lila Place and Joanne Place and declaring an emergency.
Okay, now I believe this,
Do the emergency, and I'll change it in the body.
okay. So at this time, I'd like to make a motion to suspend the rules on Ordinance 15, 2018, and place it on its third and final reading and declare it an emergency. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, I made the motion. It was seconded by Mr. Bellin. And then Mr., let's see, you're going to go ahead and
We'll call the roll on that. Mrs.
Okay.
Stoffer?
Yes.
Mr. Bellin?
Yes.
Mr. Scafidi?
Yes.
Mr. Steele?
Yes.
Ms. McFerrin?
Yes.
Mr. Barr?
Yes.
And Mr. Fury?
Yes.
Okay, the emergency passes 7-0. Now do I,
Move to adopt.
okay, now I'm going to
That's
make.
an emergency.
All right, now we're going to make a motion to move to adopt, move to adopt as an emergency ordinance 15, 2018.
I'll second.
Okay, there's a second. Oh, now discussion.
I'd like to make an amendment in Section 3. The account number is correct, but the description for the first 120, or the first group is listed as land and development. I'd like to, my motion is that we replace land and development with sewer improvement. The account numbers are correct, the description was incorrect. May I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, it was, the motion was made by Mr. Fury. It was seconded by, was that Mr. Scafidi? Oh, Mr. Steele. Mr. Steele.
Okay, on the amendment, Mr. Fury?
Yes.
Mr. Steele?
Yes.
Mr. Scafidi?
Yes.
Ms. McFerrin?
Yes.
Mrs. Stoffer?
Yes?
Mr. Bellin?
Yes.
And Mr. Barr?
Yes.
Now I'm
Okay,
going to go ahead.
So now we have a motion to approve as amended with an emergency.
Okay, we'd like to make a motion to approve ordinance 15, 2018 as amended with an emergency. Is there a second?
I'll second.
That was I made the motion, was seconded by Mr. Bellin. Sorry, I'm losing my, so this is a bid for $1,080,334, and this is to repair failing sanitary and storm sewers. It's needed on emergency so we can enter into a contract and begin the project. Any further discussion?
Okay,
Mr. Maestros,
I'm
please
sorry,
call the
Mrs. Stoffer?
Yes.
Mr. Bellin?
Yes.
Mr. Scafidi?
Yes.
Mr. Steele?
Yes.
Ms. McFerrin?
Yes.
Mr. Barr?
Yes.
And Mr. Fury?
Yes.
Ordinance 15, 2018 passes by a 7-0 vote. Next, we have Resolution 16, 2018.
It's a resolution authorizing the mayor to enter into a memorandum of understanding with Tinkers Creek Watershed Partners Incorporated.
I'd like to make a motion to adopt Resolution 16, 2018. Is there a second?
I'll second.
I made the motion. It was seconded by Mr. Fury. This is a one-year, am I understanding correctly, a one-year memorandum acknowledging certain duties the city must fulfill because we were given a permit from the EPA authorizing discharges of stormwater.
We have to apply for EPA permits every year, and the
This-
watershed assists us in those applications. So this is a memorandum of understanding to
That we're going to do
how we're
our
going to work
part.
together to accomplish it.
Okay, got it. Any other discussion? Mr. Maestros, please call the roll.
Mrs. Stoffer?
Yes.
Mr. Fury?
Yes.
Mr. Steele?
Yes.
Ms. McFerrin?
Yes.
Mr. Bellin?
Yes.
Mr. Barr?
Yes.
And Mr. Scafidi?
Yes.
Resolution 16, 2018 passes by a 7-0 vote. Next, we have Ordinance 17, 2018.
This is an ordinance approving a change order to the contract with Prospectus Architecture LLC for additional design services related to the Golf Clubhouse project and declaring an emergency.
I'd like to make a motion to suspend the rules on Ordinance 17, 2018, place it on its third and final reading, and declare it an emergency. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, I made the motion. It was seconded by Ms. McFerrin. So this is a bid for $11,480, and it's needed on emergency because the construction contractor needs design information to keep moving with construction, the construction contract. Any further discussion on that? Mr. Maestros, please call the roll.
On the emergency, Mrs. Stoffer?
Yes.
Ms. McFerrin?
Yes.
Mr. Steele?
Yes.
Mr. Bellin?
Yes.
Mr. Barr?
Yes.
Mr. Fury?
Yes.
And Mr. Scafidi?
Yes.
Now I'd like to make a motion to adopt ordinance, emergency clause passes 7-0. Now I'd like to make a motion to adopt ordinance 17, 2018 as an emergency. Is there a second?
I'll second.
I made the motion. It was seconded by Mr. Fury. Any further discussion? Mr. Maestros, please call the roll.
Mrs. Stoffer?
Yes.
Mr. Fury?
Yes.
Mr. Steele?
Yes.
Ms. McFerrin?
Yes.
Mr. Bellin?
Yes.
Mr. Barr?
Yes.
And Mr. Scafidi?
Yes.
Ordinance 17, 2018 passes by a 7-0 vote. Ordinance 18, 2018.
An ordinance approving a change order of the contract with Kavanaugh Building for additional work related to the golf clubhouse project and declaring an emergency.
I'd like to make a motion to suspend the rules on ordinance 18, 2018, place it on its third and final reading, and declare it an emergency. Is there a second?
I'll second.
I made the motion. It was seconded by Mr. Fury. This is a change order for around $450,000 for blinds and AV equipment on the clubhouse. We need this on an emergency so the contractor can proceed with the work prior to drywall and ceiling installation. Any further discussion?
No, this is audiovisual equipment and some of the blinds associated with that we need to move forward with, so, before they close the walls up.
Right. Anything else? Hey, Mr. Maestros, please call the roll.
Mrs. Stoffer?
Yes.
Mr. Fury?
Yes.
Ms. McFerrin?
Yes.
Mr. Bellin?
Yes.
Mr. Barr?
Yes.
Mr. Scafidi?
Yes.
And Mr. Steele?
Yes.
Ordinance 18, 2018 passes by a 7-0 vote. Next, we have ordinance 19, 2018.
I think
I need to
18,
go on?
we just had the
Oh.
emergency on there.
Okay, then I need to make a motion now to adopt ordinance 2018, ordinance 18, 2018 as an emergency.
I'll second.
Thank you. I made the motion. It was seconded by Mr. Barr. Any discussion? Mr. Maestros, please call the roll.
Mrs. Stoffer?
Yes.
Mr. Barr?
Yes.
Ms. McFerrin?
Yes.
Mr. Bellin?
Yes.
Mr. Fury?
Yes.
Mr. Scafidi?
Yes.
Mr. Steele?
Yes.
Ordinance 18, 2018 now passes by a 7-0 vote as an emergency. Next, we have ordinance 19, 2018.
Ordinance 19, 2018 is an ordinance amending the current year appropriations for the general revenue account as established in Ordinance 101-2017, the appropriations ordinance of the City of Twinsburg for the year 2018, and declaring an emergency.
I'd like to make a motion to suspend the rules on ordinance 19, 2018, place it on its third and final reading, and declare it an emergency. Is there a second?
I'll second.
I made the motion. It was seconded by Mr. Fury. This is now the transfer of $107,500. And it's needed on an emergency to provide that subsidy to the, is it to the Glen Eagles Clubhouse Fund?
Yes.
Okay. Any further discussion? Mr.
Mrs.
Maestros, please call the roll. Oh,
Mrs. Stoffer?
Yes.
Mr. Fury?
Yes.
Mr. Bellin?
Yes.
Mr. Barr?
Yes.
Mr. Scafidi?
Yes.
Mr. Steele?
Yes.
Ms. McFerrin?
Yes.
Now I'd like to make a motion to adopt ordinance 19, 2018 as an emergency. Is there a second?
I'll second.
I made the motion. It was seconded by Mr. Fury. Any further discussion? Mr. Maestros, please call the roll.
Mrs. Stoffer?
Yes.
Mr. Fury?
Yes.
Mr. Bellin?
Yes.
Mr. Barr,
Yes.
Mr. Scafidi,
Yes.
Mr. Steele,
Yes.
Ms. McFerrin.
Yes.
Ordinance 19, 2018 passes by a 7-0 vote as an emergency. Next, we have Resolution 20, 2018.
It's a resolution authorizing all actions necessary to accept Northeast Ohio Public Energy Council, NOPEC's Energized Community Grants.
I'd like to make a motion to adopt Resolution 20, 2018. Is there a second?
Second?
I made the motion. It was seconded by Mr. Bellin. Now, the city's a member of NOPEC, and to be eligible for grant funds, we must pass legislation accepting the grant and enter into a grant agreement with NOPEC. It's for about $25,000, is that correct?
Up to.
Up to $25,000. Any further discussion? Mr. Maestros, please call the roll.
Mrs. Stoffer.
Yes.
Mr. Bellin.
Yes.
Mr. Barr.
Yes.
Mr. Fury.
Yes.
Mr. Scafidi.
Yes.
Mr. Steele.
Yes.
Ms. McFerrin.
Yes.
Resolution 20, 2018 passes by a 7-0 vote. Next, we have Ordinance 21, 2018.
An ordinance confirming the mayor's appointment of Sarah Butchigras as the finance director for the city of Twinsburg pursuant to city charter and declaring an emergency.
I'd like to make a motion to suspend the rules on Ordinance 21, 2018, place it on its third and final reading, and declare it an emergency. Is there a second?
I'll second.
I made the motion. It was seconded by Ms. McFerrin. Very excited to welcome Sarah Butchgrassi to the
We didn't
city
know
of
that.
Twinsburg. Welcome. We needed this on an emergency because we need to fill the position as quickly as possible. Any further discussion?
Not on the emergency. I'll talk when you do your regular motion.
Okay. All right. Mr. Maestros, please call the roll.
Mrs. Stoffer.
Yes.
Ms. McFerrin.
Yes.
Mr. Barr.
Yes.
Mr. Fury.
Yes.
Mr. Scafidi.
Yes.
Mr. Steele.
Yes.
Mr. Bellin.
Yes.
The emergency clause passes 7-0. Now I'd like to make a motion to adopt Ordinance 21, 2018 as an emergency. Is there a second? Oh, who was that? Mr. Barr? I made the motion. It was seconded by Mr. Barr. Any discussion?
No, I can talk. So, yeah, I think, council, I would ask that you approve Sarah Butchigras to be appointed. We went through a rather lengthy interview process, and so we've got ourselves here. I think she's going to be a great addition to the city. She comes with a wealth of experience, and so I just would ask that you approve her so she can get started here before our next meeting.
Any other discussion?
I'm sorry. Mrs. Stoffer.
Yes.
Mr. Barr.
Yes.
Mr. Fury.
Yes.
Mr. Scafidi.
Yes.
Mr. Steele.
Yes.
Ms. McFerrin.
Yes.
Mr. Bellin.
Yes.
Ordinance 21, 2018 passes by a 7-0 vote.
Welcome
And-
aboard.
Welcome, welcome, yes. And finally, we have Resolution 22, 2018.
A resolution declaring the month of February as Heart Month in the city of Twinsburg.
I'd like to make a motion to adopt Resolution 22, 2018. Is there a second?
I'll second.
I made the motion. It was seconded by Ms. McFerrin. And I'd like to thank Ms. McFerrin for suggesting the citywide Heart Month.
It's supposed to be Healthy Heart.
Healthy Heart Month, well, and for
We
getting
love that
it,
word.
getting the ball rolling, so we appreciate it.
You can make a motion to amend.
Should we amend it? Healthy Heart Month.
We could treat that as a clerical error and include that in the final version.
Any further discussion?
Yes.
Yes, okay.
I just want to give a shout out to Joanne McFerrin for, I know some time ago she had suggested the citywide CPR training. And that's finally coming to fruition. And then also from that, we now have this February as our Healthy Heart Month. So Joanne, nice job. And it was nice of you to bring that to the forefront. And I think that everybody's going to be take advantage of that, I hope. And it should be advantageous to everyone. So thank you again
Thank you.
for all your work. That's it.
Any other discussion? Mr. Maestros, please call the roll.
Mrs. Stoffer.
Yes.
Ms. McFerrin.
Yes.
Mr. Fury.
Yes.
Mr. Scafidi?
Yes.
Mr. Steele?
Yes.
Mr. Bellin?
Yes.
And Mr. Barr?
Yes.
Resolution 22, 2018 passes by a 7-0 vote. That's the end of our legislation. We're now going to move on to unfinished business, new business, and miscellaneous.
Yeah.
Mr. Fury.
Sure. Thank you. I'd like to make a motion from the Planning Commission. Upon recommendation and approval of the Twinsburg Planning Commission, I make a motion that council approve the preliminary plat and site plan for the Quarry Reserve at Boulder Brook. May I have a second?
I'll second.
Discussion?
Yeah, just for council's knowledge, I did attend that meeting. I pulled up the minutes. So with this, the discussion was, and actually Planning Commission issued its own variances. Planning Commission has the power to issue certain variances. There was an extension of the cul-de-sac that was under discussion because of emergency access for emergency vehicles, those kind of things. And Planning Commission was able to go ahead and approve that variance on their own without it going to BZA, and then upon that, they did approve the preliminary site plan. So I just wanted to make the rest of council aware that I have the minutes, and I did attend that meeting.
And that was the confusion. I thought they had to go through BZA. But, I agree.
That's it.
Roll call on the motion. Mr. Fury?
Yes.
Mrs. Stoffer?
Yes.
Mr. Scafidi?
Yes.
Mr. Steele?
Yes.
Ms. McFerrin?
Yes.
Mr. Bellin?
Yes.
And Mr. Barr?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Anything else?
Just to wish my son, Michael, a happy birthday on the 15th. He'll be 21.
Happy
That happened
birthday.
fast.
Yeah, happy birthday.
So,
Great.
that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Steele.
I guess I'll follow them first and congratulations. I want to wish my eldest daughter, Stephanie, a happy birthday. It was February the 9th, and she's 36 years old.
Can't say
She's
that.
happy for you saying that.
Yeah.
Anything else, Mr. Steele?
And that's it.
That's it. Okay, Mr. Scafidi.
I have no birthdays in my family, it's May and July, so I'm just going to say I have nothing further tonight.
Thank you. Ms. McFerrin?
I have a long list. So, one, something that came up this week talking with some residents about city taxes that I just wanted to share because it was pretty enlightening. We pay our taxes for 2017 in the year 2018. So the city of Twinsburg, our tax rate is 1.91, and we are lower than the township, which is at 2.27, and Reminderville, the part that goes to Twinsburg Schools, which is at 2.05, and then Reminderville that goes to Aurora Schools is at 2.18. So we're significantly lower. If anyone has questions of where your tax dollars go, you can actually go to the county website, and they show you by your house what the percentage is, the year of the levies, and how much actually goes to the school district, how much comes back to the city. And it's really an eye-opener. It's all out there. And I even called down to Kristen Scalise's office to ask questions. And, it's all out there, and everyone's really willing to help you. And I just want to say thank you to all the department heads that work so hard to keep us in our budget, and for council for everything that they've done to keep us with one of the lowest rates around. And I have the tax schedules if anyone wants to look at them. I did have a call from another resident about prescription drug programs, and we do have a program that if you have prescription drugs that you can drop them off at the police department in the lobby, and then they'll be properly disposed of. Our last meeting, the Historical Society did a presentation on why we should all be members, and I have my membership card now. They do have individual and family rates, and you can do multiple years. So thank you to the Historical Society for coming. The Friends of the Twinsburg Parks, they also have a membership drive, and you can get their website online. So wanted to mention that. What else do I have? I did attend the career day. I spoke primarily as a realtor, but some city stuff did come up. And the biggest concerns of the fourth graders was what's going to happen with the sledding hill and the baseball fields. And what other thing? Oh, and we attended the meet the greet with the dean of Kent State, and they're really excited about our campus, and we have one of the highest enrollments. So that's all I had today.
Great, Mr. Bellin.
No, I don't really have anything else. I hope to see everybody on Saturday at rush hour for the bartending event.
That's right. Mr. Barr.
We'll echo Mr. Ballin's sentiments. This is a great opportunity for us to raise money for, again, the Community Emergency Response Team, which is entirely composed of volunteers. They are hugely beneficial in times of not only emergencies, but large events like Twins Day or Luminosity. So this is a great opportunity to get out there and try and raise some funds for those folks for equipment or whatever they need. Everybody up here will be celebrity bartending, if you will. So please stop up at rush hour. It starts at 7 p.m. and goes until close. We hope to see you all up there. I have nothing else this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. McFerrin has something else?
I did, I forgot. So one of our residents, Sue Bruce, is in charge of Project Linus for Northeast Ohio, and Make a Blanket Day is February 17th. We'll be hosting an event in Solon at my office at Berkshire Hathaway, and then 5-Pack Catans will be also hosting, and it's 9 to 12 in the afternoon, and it's just getting together, making blankets that will then be distributed at various hospitals. I know Metro Hospital is one of them. There was an incident in Chardon, and then everyone in the school district got a blanket, and they're very appreciative, and they're always come to these events, and they work on blankets year round because it was so meaningful in their community. So if anyone has time, you can donate fleece, you can come for an hour and make some blankets, or you can just drop off blankets you've already made. But it's a big project, and I'm really excited to be part. This is the second year we're doing that with them. So if you have any questions, Sue Bruce, she's the one. She's over there. That's it.
Great, thank you. Mayor.
Nothing else from these, that's it.
Mr. Maestros?
I'd just like to point out, usually our department heads all leave before legislation. I think they just stuck around to watch me fumble through as assistant, as clerk tonight, so I just wanted to point that out. Nothing else, thank you.
For your help tonight.
You did a very good
Thank
job.
you.
Thank you, Mr. Maestros. Anybody else? I would just like to congratulate the swimming and diving team on such a great job, and I believe our hockey teams, I think we had a great season all the way for all of our sports teams in Twinsburg, so congratulations to them. And I want to thank Ms. McFerrin and Mayor Yates for coming to Career Day. It's nice to get to spend a couple of hours with children, huh? Thank you for coming. I really appreciate that.
Spend all day long.
At this time, I'd like to adjourn the meeting. So at 8:35, meeting adjourned.